The global auto industry held its breath as President Trump's tariffs threatened decades of trade. For Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda, this was a direct challenge to their U.S. business. Tariffs risked adding thousands to car prices, creating uncertainty for consumers and executives alike. The future of their American presence was suddenly in question. The U.S.-Japan auto trade story is decades old, marked by both rivalry and partnership. In the 1980s, Japanese cars surged in popularity, leading to the voluntary restraint agreement that capped exports to the U.S. To adapt, Japanese automakers began building cars in America, Honda in Ohio, Toyota in Kentucky, launching a strategy of localization. Over time, these companies became major U.S. employers, sourcing parts from thousands of American suppliers. By the 2010s, many Japanese cars sold in the U.S. were assembled locally, with high American content. This integration was meant to shield them from protectionism. The Trump tariffs, however, targeted not just finished vehicles but also imported parts, threatening even US-built cars. Modern supply chains are global. A car assembled in Kentucky still relies on parts from around the world. Tariffs on these parts could undermine the very localization strategy that once eased trade tensions. For Toyota and Honda, this was a new, more complex challenge. The industry's evolution from export caps to deep integration now faced its toughest test. The rules of the game had changed again. Japanese automakers had to rethink their approach to survive. The stakes for their American operations had never been higher. The tariff announcement sent a chill through the U.S. auto market. Uncertainty gripped consumers and businesses alike. Some rushed to buy before prices rose, others delayed purchases. Sales figures became volatile, making it nearly impossible for automakers to plan inventory or pricing. Toyota and Honda saw their stock prices drop and faced currency fluctuations, adding financial risk. Industry analysts warned that a 25% tariff could cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs and shrink GDP. Automakers and industry groups used these projections to lobby against the tariffs, arguing they would harm the economy. The public relations challenge was immense. Toyota and Honda had spent years building their image as American employers and community partners. The national security justification for tariffs threatened this narrative. Both companies launched campaigns to highlight their U.S. investments and workforce. They reminded lawmakers and the public that many Japanese cars are built by Americans. The battle for public opinion became as important as the fight in Washington. The future of their U.S. business depended on it. Toyota's response was swift and strategic. The company doubled down on its commitment to U.S. manufacturing, announcing new investments in American plants. This sent a clear message: Toyota is part of the American economy, not an outsider. Politically, Toyota ramped up lobbying, meeting with lawmakers and officials to present data on their economic impact. They argued that tariffs on parts would hurt U.S. factories and jobs, especially in states like Kentucky and Texas. Publicly, Toyota focused on positive messaging, highlighting American workers and communities that rely on their factories. Made in America became a central theme in ads and press releases. Behind the scenes, Toyota analyzed its supply chain, seeking ways to source more components from North America. Shifting suppliers is complex and time-consuming, but necessary to reduce tariff exposure. Toyota's approach was twofold: defend its current model publicly and quietly prepare for a more protectionist future. The company's survival depended on both fronts. The stakes were high, but Toyota was determined to adapt. Their strategy: invest, lobby, and localize. The goal remained indispensable to the American economy. Honda, too, leaned on its American legacy to counter the tariff threat. As the first Japanese automaker to build cars in the U.S., Honda highlighted decades of investment, especially in Ohio. The company emphasized that most Hondas sold in America are built in U.S. plants. Honda positioned itself as a net exporter, arguing it contributed to a positive U.S. trade balance. This message resonated in states where Honda's exports supported local jobs. Honda announced plans to increase U.S. production of hybrid components, deepening its American manufacturing base. This move signaled long-term commitment and helped insulate against tariffs on imported parts. Internally, Honda worked to optimize its North American supply chain, meeting stricter rules under the USMCA. The company sought more regional suppliers to qualify for tariff-free trade. This shift accelerated Honda's trend toward regionalization. The goal: protect U.S. operations and jobs from future trade shocks. Honda's strategy was clear: invest, localize, and adapt. The company aimed to secure its place in the American market. For American consumers, the tariffs meant one thing: higher car prices. A 25% tariff could add thousands to the cost of a new car, hitting both imports and US-built vehicles that rely on foreign parts. This price shock threatened to shrink overall auto sales as many buyers would be priced out of the market. Consumers might delay purchases, turn to used cars, or keep their old vehicles longer. The impact would ripple through the economy, affecting lending, insurance, and repair industries. Entry-level, fuel-efficient models, often made abroad, would become less affordable, limiting consumer choice. Tariffs could push buyers toward larger, less efficient vehicles, undermining fuel economy and environmental goals. The uncertainty itself was costly, making it hard for families to plan and for dealerships to offer deals. The market became less transparent and competitive. Even before tariffs took effect, the threat alone disrupted buying decisions. The American car buyer was caught in the crossfire of trade policy. The result: fewer choices, higher prices, and more anxiety. The consumer paid the price for global trade tensions. The tariffs, meant to protect American jobs, actually put many at risk. International automakers like Toyota and Honda employ over 130,000 US workers, plus hundreds of thousands more at suppliers. Tariffs on imported parts would raise costs for US-built cars, making them less competitive and threatening jobs. Reduced sales could mean production cuts and layoffs at American factories. Workers in states like Kentucky and Ohio faced uncertainty, caught between policy and reality. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries could hurt US exports, impacting Ford, GM, and even foreign automakers' American plants. The United Auto Workers Union recognized the risk, calling for smarter trade policy instead of blunt tariffs. The integrated nature of the industry meant that protectionist measures could backfire. The promise of job protection became a gamble with high stakes. For many American auto workers, the future was suddenly uncertain. The industry's complexity defied simple solutions. The risk of collateral damage was real. The fate of thousands hung in the balance. The tariff threat forced automakers to rethink their global supply chains. For decades, the industry chased efficiency, sourcing parts worldwide. But the new reality demanded resilience and regionalization, even at higher cost. Toyota and Honda accelerated efforts to build North American supply networks, mapping dependencies and seeking local suppliers. The USMCA trade deal encouraged this shift, with stricter rules for tariff-free status. Companies pressured global suppliers to set up shop in North America or switch to regional partners. This was a long-term, complex process. Resourcing key components takes years and major investment. The result: higher costs, but a more stable supply chain, less vulnerable to global shocks. The industry began to fragment into regional blocks: North America, Europe, Asia. Toyota and Honda aimed to operate semi-independently in each region, with dedicated R&D and manufacturing. This was the next evolution of localization, now driven by necessity. The global auto industry was being reshaped by trade uncertainty. The future belonged to those who could adapt fastest. The tariff era permanently changed the game for Japanese automakers in America. Even though the harshest tariffs weren't enacted, the threat exposed the risks of global trade. Toyota and Honda responded by deepening their US roots, focusing on regional resilience over global efficiency. Billions were invested in American facilities, especially in next-generation tech like EVs and batteries. Projects like Toyota's battery plant in North Carolina and Honda's EV venture in Ohio became symbols of commitment. These investments made them indispensable to America's economic and technological future. But new challenges loom. EV supply chains depend on critical minerals from abroad, creating fresh trade flashpoints. The political climate remains unpredictable. The national security argument could return at any time. Toyota and Honda must keep proving their value to American workers and consumers. The Trump-era tariffs forced a reckoning, accelerating the shift to localization. By investing, lobbying, and reconfiguring supply chains, they weathered the storm and fortified their US presence. The industry is now more regionalized, and the definition of a foreign automaker has changed. As the electric future approaches, the question remains: can deep localization shield them from the next wave of trade politics? The answer will shape the future of the US-Japan automotive partnership.